You are in the Aerospace panel for... And if you came here for Onward and Upward, Inclusion in Aerospace, you are in the right place. And if you came here for some other discussion, you are still in the right place because this is where it's at. We are thrilled to be here with all of you today. Out in Equal Summit is such a gift to all of us. Everyone having a good time? Okay, so how many of you out there are from Boeing? Well, they are in the front row.
It's not fair.
How about our Northrop friends? Oh. Nice. Bechtel? How about our Airbus friends? All right, Malu, I think your crowd was the loudest.
Yeah.
Very loud. And do we have any folks from the airlines? Okay. Raytheon? Any Raytheon? Okay. Who else?
Lockheed.
Lockheed. All right. Lockheed?
GE Aerospace.
All right, GE Aerospace. Okay. And any?
Yay.
Oh, Eaton.
Yay! All right. Oh, yeah. And who else did I miss?
Oh, Honeywell.
Honeywell in the house. General Dynamics. We are so happy you're here. Everyone take out your phones and text your friends and tell them to get over here because we are going to have a blast over the next hour with these four illustrious panelists. So I'm Sarah Bowen. I'm with the Boeing Company. That was better. And I will let my colleagues here introduce themselves.
Hi, so I'm Nilu Carolyn. I'm Vice President of Human Resources at Northrop Grumman. And you would think today we have 100,000 people right in this room, but we're 100,000 people strong, primarily in the US. We also have some international presence. I've been with Northrop for a little over 10 years and very proud to be there.
And what's your favorite product?
Oh, my product, of course. So you'll see on the screen that thing that looks like a big hexagon that's yellow. That's a portion of a massive, massive space telescope that is now a million miles. Let me get my facts out so I make sure I do this right for the space team that's here so they don't. 1 million miles from Earth. 1 million miles from Earth, right? And I picked it, one, because it's one of the products that we can actually talk about, but the other, it's an amazing tribute to what's great about our industry, right? So from a government customer perspective, there's incredible partnership. It's NASA and the European Space Agency and the Canadian Space Agency and universities all around the globe. But from a private sector perspective, it's many of the folks who are in this room. We're all part of that initiative to in various degrees. And it's been up in space, and it's going to teach us so much about the future. And it's gigantic. So if you don't know anything about it, it had to fold up into its rocket, and then it had to expand. And its sun shield alone is the size of a tennis court. Wow. That thing that you see, the picture that you see there, the mirror array there that works with the infrared camera and other things, it is 2 stories high. And it had to go 1 million miles away from here. So I know that was a little longer than even my intro, but it's the most amazing thing ever.
Very cool. Very cool.
Kevin.
I'm just laughing. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm Kevin Edwards. I'm the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Bechtel Global Corporation. 50,000 people strong. We continue to grow. Added over 4,000 people last year, probably another 5,000 to 6,000 this year. So business is doing really well. Thankful to you three and the other aerospace businesses out there. I will tell you, I'm in awe of each of you and all of you out there in this space. We are not a product developer. We are a developer of what you need to build your products. And so that's a pretty big thing for us as an engineering construction company to be able to provide capabilities to deliver your spaces in your buildings, your locations, to be able to build these things. But I wanted to share with you something that's been significant for me and for us. As an engineer by degree in building all types of things, airports, facilities, as well as rail systems. I've been on jobs where I've had to walk miles to do reconnaissance and site visits of particular things. And so now we're pretty heavy on using a drone to do all that reconnaissance for us and actually figuring out exactly our product profile and what we have from a standpoint of delivering for our customers, what our supplies are available, lineage, how do we actually define footage in regards to what we've installed and those type of things. And it's been incredible and a game changer for us. So for me, that's my product. Some of you out there probably built this drone, but it's been a great thing for us to use. So proud of being in the industry and providing the support for you all. So.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jennifer Ogle with Airbus. I'm transitioning into a new role, but I was leading DE&I for Airbus Americas, along with culture change, employee engagement, and employee relations. We call it transformation because we think all of those combined efforts really lead to a better Airbus. I'm now moving into the VP of HR role for our helicopters business for North America, which is headquartered in Grand Prairie, Texas. So I've got one foot in the old job, one foot in the new job, so it makes for a fun dance.
And you're transforming.
Yes, and I'm transforming.
You really want to dance, don't you, Jennifer?
I do want to dance. We're going to dance later, I promise. So the reason I chose, the picture I chose is because I spent the last 10 years with the Airbus and commercial aircraft. 3 of those years was in our mothership of Toulouse, France, our global headquarters. And I used to have an office space where I was lucky enough to see our products take off and land every day. And my favorite one was the Beluga, which is our transport aircraft that transports a lot of our large parts back and forth between our final assembly lines in Europe. And we actually had a contest with employees to make the Beluga come to life, where we actually had an employee come up with an idea to paint the face of the Beluga to look like a whale. And so today it looks just like a beluga whale, and I love it. It's my very favorite aircraft, although I've never flown on it before. It's still my favorite.
I didn't notice the face on there.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. Well, and just to wrap up this part of the conversation, I lead the Global Equity, Diversity, Inclusion team, as well as employee listening and organizational research for Boeing. I chose Starliner because space. It's just so very cool. And when I joined the Boeing company almost 5 years ago, our mission was to protect, connect, explore, and inspire. And that inspire piece for me every day is a reality. And it's things like Starliner sending human beings up into space to whether it's the International Space Station or low orbit Earth. I just find it, it's inspiring every single day. So that's my product that I chose.
Good.
Okay, so to start us off, we are going to pulse this audience and get your sense right now. How inclusive is the aerospace industry? Yep, so you've got the Menti code right there coming up. Tell us your perception. How inclusive for LGBTQIA+ is aerospace? And I'm curious, Milou, when you said you came to Northrop about 11 years ago.
Yep.
What was your perception coming into aerospace of what you were going to find from an inclusion standpoint?
Yeah, it was really interesting. When someone called me to ask if I'd come meet with a CHRO, and I said, it's not really an industry I ever considered. And at first I thought it was a very insular industry and not one that would really be open to someone who had a very different and diverse background.
Right.
And I found absolutely the opposite once I learned more and got to know the leaders and ultimately joined the company.
So your perception at the outset
Was very wrong.
different
Yeah,
from-
I thought white male, very command and control, not very inclusive. I had a lot of very wrong assumptions. And the industry has changed and improved even since that time. So that was over 10 years ago. But even then, I was wrong.
Is the Menti poll working? All good?
Okay.
Okay.
So,
And Kevin, you've been with Bechtel,
23 years.
And
Yes.
when you joined, what were you said you came in as an engineer. What was your idea about inclusion?
It didn't exist to some level. When you think about construction and engineering and all of that, think about all the work we do across the globe and all the different cultures we have to bring together and the dynamic changes that we've made in 23 years. Mind-blowing in regards to that, but it just was a different way of business back then. So it's good to see where we are today.
How about you, Jennifer?
You know, my experience was a little bit different because I joined Airbus 10 years ago, and when I was thinking about making the move, you know, I do what everybody does. I went onto the company website to take a look at, you know, what spoke to me in terms of what the company was about, because at the time we were building our final assembly line in Mobile, Alabama, and I was hired to start up the HR function for that. So we didn't really have a blueprint of who Airbus really was or what the manufacturing site would look like. And so when I looked at the company website, it screamed of being focused on people. Frankly, I think that's the European influence that has been so nice for me personally, is to see how our European colleagues have led and guided the company with a value set for many, many years that really puts the focus on us as employees and on people, and that's what differentiates the company. 10 years later, I still feel that way. Having lived and worked abroad for the company, I still feel that way. So it's been a really enriching experience. Now, we view inclusion and diversity a bit differently abroad than we do in the U.S., and we can talk about that a bit more later, I'm sure.
That's a teaser for what's to come.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'll just share, when I started telling people that I was seriously considering this job at Boeing, the phrase that people shared with me was, you all know what it was? Stale, pale, and male. And that's sort of the perception on the street. And we'll get into how true that may or may not have been and how true that may or may not be today.
Right.
All right, so let's take a look at your responses. Definitely the plurality of votes are right in that middle section. So 59 of you said, kind of in the middle. Only 9 of you said, is 5 good? 5 is good, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So 9 of you said, we're great, can't do any better. And 10 of you said, we've got a long way to go, with 65 of you somewhere in between. All right, well, we are going to continue this conversation as we go through, and we're going to continue to look at those Mint polls. Don't get ahead. We've only done the first one.
They skipped ahead.
They skipped ahead, yeah. Well, you can change your vote maybe as we talk
fine.
and as you learn more about attraction, retention, benefits, and so forth that each of these companies offer and what we know about in the industry.
Yeah, so I think if you haven't already answered this question that you can see on the screen, go ahead and do that. It looks like lots of you have, because we're interested in your sense. And many of you are in the industry, so that's good. Hopefully, some of you feel very positively about that. But I think it's important also to acknowledge that you might have very different experiences depending on which location you're in, right? What state you're in or what country you're in, or even perhaps what heritage organization you're from. Many of us have done a lot of acquisition, and sometimes we inherit different cultures and different norms that are then changed over time, right? As we begin to integrate more and cross-pollinate more between our organizations. When we talk about attraction and retention and what really is aimed at what this community really values, we could talk about so many things. We could fill the entire hour with this question. You know, I think about the culture. I think about benefits and other things that, and other support services that help people thrive, right? Think about what we do externally, how we show support externally. I'm curious for each of you, what are the things that you think are most important from an attraction and retention for within your company? So Kevin, you want to start us off there?
Yeah. I'm sitting here looking at the data. I'm a Six Sigma person, and data is all through and through, and I think I scare people all the time because I always talk about data. But when I look at this, I'm thinking if you look at the blue and the pink, and that's 32, and you look at the 28 and the 15, that's a significant amount of people that says that something is really wrong or I don't know what's happening in my organization. To not know what your company strategy is and to not understand or realize that your company doesn't have a strategy is something very significant that we need to change. And I think to answer your question, the first piece is, how do we actually communicate or share exactly what we're trying to do in an organization so everyone can be a part of what we're trying to do? And sometimes people start to think that it's one way of communicating, and I always have to tell my team members, my colleagues, and others, there needs to be a triangular approach in regards to how we communicate, because one way is not going to land for everyone. And do you have a significant plan to do that? And for us, you know, the attraction piece is significant, but the most significant piece that I'm starting to understand in our organization is, why do we not retain colleagues that fit in this space in regards to this community of LGBTQIA? And we started pulling the string a little bit recently when we were working through the HRC discussion and how we evolve our company to make sure we have the right programs and practices in place. And we realized that the individuals leading those groups did not understand the impact they were making or not making by not driving the right direction. And it was enlightening to understand where people were in their mindset of why they could not shift. All they could think about is what they had or didn't have versus the whole wide community. And I think that's a pretty significant thing if you talk about attracting talent, to then think about what do you have in place to be able to support your talent. And I think that's significant.
Yeah, great.
You know what, we're still on a journey at Airbus, but one of the things that we've done that I think we feel very proud about is focusing first on what do we need to do to make sure our LGBT plus people feel safe at work? And what do we need to do to make sure they understand their value? And to make sure that we have an equitable array of benefits programs, development programs, et cetera. So it really started in the benefit space for us a few years ago. And in the benefit space, you know, we made sure we provided gender reassignment surgery benefits and those kinds of things. And now it's evolved to, how do we better support folks in our community to make sure if they are going through a transition in life or someone in their family is going through that transition, how can we best support them? Through our HR business partner colleagues, through educating and creating awareness for managers so they can have a thoughtful conversation with their employees who are facing these major challenges and decisions. And Kevin, it goes back to what you said about culture. You know, making sure we have benefits is one thing, but really making sure that we have a workplace culture where people in our community not only feel welcome, but feel embraced, completely valued, and that we're actually leveraging the differences that we all have to make the company better. You know, that's what we're really trying to drive for.
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful with outside organizations like Out and Equal or the Human Rights Campaign, right? They're phenomenal partners in helping us know, what does good look like, right?
Exactly.
And I know that when I was researching Northrop way back when I was thinking about coming, I looked at a lot of those metrics and I was sort of stunned by many of them, particularly when I think about the Human Rights Campaign, because it was 2006 when Northrop first scored 100% on the Equality Index, and we've scored that ever since. And so that's really an external affirmation of what our company offers. And is it enough? Probably not, right? But is it more than most? Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Right? And so it's really focused on what does the community need from our internal feedback, but also those external sort of performance factors to say, what does good look like is really important.
I think you're all exactly spot on. It's about the benefits as the foundation, Jennifer, as you said. It's some of that external validation and accreditation, and it's the culture, first and foremost, right, which is the most elusive of all of the things we've mentioned. It is the one that we will continually be chasing.
Right.
For me, when I think about this question of attraction and retention, there are three things that come to mind. Number one is sponsoring and supporting organizations like Out and Equal, which for Boeing is now a Tier 1 external technical affiliation. We call it Tier 1, which is the highest level. It's important. And we have recruiters here, so it's important. and going to OSTEM and things like that. First
Yeah.
of all, if you want to recruit LGBT talent, if you want to open those doors, you got to get out there and make an intentional effort.
Yep.
The second thing is the benefits, right? And yes, they're foundational, and yes, they really matter.
Yes.
Supporting gender transition, supporting families of, supporting, domestic partners, and so on and so forth. I just had a conversation in the hallway with someone who said, I had 12 offers. I chose Boeing because of the benefits, because of what the benefits do for my daughter. That's really powerful. But then thirdly, I do think it's some of these, sort of more intangible yet personal things like the stories and the people and the visibility. I'm going to call my colleague who I see sitting out there, Michael Cox, who was on the board of Out and Equal for 6 years. He's now the chief HR officer for Boeing Commercial Airplanes. He is one of the few out senior executives at our company, and I am sure that there are a lot of folks who came to Boeing because of the role model that Michael Cox is. We've got Trinity Downing sitting here in the front row, who's a finalist for an Audi Award this year and who has been vocal on LinkedIn and other social media about trans rights and the support that Boeing provides to our transgender. And those things matter, knowing that there are real people behind the statements and behind the benefits, knowing that there's someone you can call up when you come. I think that matters a lot, but we still have a long way to go. Like you said, Jennifer, the culture is, it's 3 steps forward and 2 steps back.
Absolutely.
And there's still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. So you guys are doing a great job on Menti, keeping us on track. So thank you for that, because we could talk all night. And I've got all night.
Me too.
If you guys want to hang out. But we really wanted to start thinking with a global mindset. And we really wanted to understand the thoughts you had around how do we tackle this topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion with a global lens in mind. For companies like Airbus that may be headquartered globally but have a very large footprint in the US and Canada, or US-based companies that have a large footprint outside the US, like my colleagues on the stage here. So, I'm curious for my fellow panelists, what do you believe the challenges are when we're facing this very different world and the perceptions around what diversity, equity, and inclusion really mean? Sarah, I'll start with you.
Yeah, this is, I love this question, and I love your statement about how you think Airbus was positively influenced by the European center headquarters there. We all know that it's tough in certain parts of the world. I would say, and I'm sorry, I keep calling people out in the audience. Sorry, I see JC there sitting in the front row, who's from the Netherlands, the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage, and I say that JC is responsible for that. So in Europe, it's easier than it is in the Middle East. But Pooja, who's also sitting there in the front row from India, India recently decriminalized same-sex relationships. Now it's something that we can talk about, we can put in our policy, and with Pooja's help, we just had our first Boeing India Pride this past June, and 400 people showed up for the Pride March. First time. It's amazing. And as we see, across the world, it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back in terms of the laws as well. But, Singapore, when Singapore decriminalized same-sex relationships, boom, we put a BRG chapter there. We've got BRG chapters in Australia, Singapore, Canada, Latin America. We are doing our best to provide that support around the world. There are still challenges, we know, in the Middle East and in Northern Africa. And we know that those the situations in those countries can be a barrier for development opportunities, take expat assignments and so forth. Those things we need to solve. But I'll say this for Boeing, and I'm sure it's true for your companies as well. Whatever's happening in the outside world, inside the 4 walls of our company, we stand for inclusion. We stand for non-discrimination, non-harassment. You walk through our doors, You should be safe, and we are going to do everything we can to keep it that way, no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah. You know, Sarah, Claudia, next year we will have 50 people in the front row, so I can start calling names out like you did. I'm actually going to start calling some Northrop and some Boeing people myself. But you know, we talked earlier today about the moment I had earlier this year when I went to India in our office. And so you think about the evolution. There's parts of the world and regions that we work that we can't even talk about this, right? And so I'm sitting on my hands and I'm saying to myself, I remember where I was 5 years ago in parts of these worlds where women couldn't even exist in the workplace or had to be behind doors, right? And now that has changed. So I'm hopeful in these particular parts of the world that our LGBTQIA employees will be able to come out and be the way they are, and we can support them that way. Because I've seen the evolution in India, I've seen the evolution in Latin America in regards to where they've come. And I sat on the stage with my colleagues in India, and we celebrated the first transgender colleague in India who came out to be trans. And we sat on the stage and celebrated that individual and had a talk, and I got emotional. And I'm a person that will be very vulnerable, and I will put it out there and feel the emotions, because I know how hard it is to exist the way you want to exist. And I think we've got to open those doors to be able to allow our colleagues to be exactly who they want to be. And we have to think about the global lens. And the evolution we've made in the US means we're just at another phase, but there's other challenges our colleagues deal with even in that space. When I hear a colleague call me and say, Kevin, I'm really concerned that I'm going to come out as being trans. How are my employees going to work through this? And having that conversation. So being present to do that is important. And I think it's probably the same for you, Mila.
Yeah. Our international footprint is smaller than yours. But what's amazing is I really see it as a recruiting advantage, particularly in our offices in the UK and also in Australia. The fact that we are accepting, the fact that we are inclusive, the fact that we begin to have our ERGs present internationally as well. Right. Like you and other parts of the world, we're still learning and trying to understand how do we go about this effort. But it's so important to those employees who have always been members of our teams in those countries to know that we stand for this and that they can come to events like this or other events that we have in the US and sort of experience it. So the other thing I think that's important on the international front is not to assume the way we do things in the US is the way it should be done everywhere.
Right.
Exactly.
And sometimes, you know, we have a very America first kind of perspective in our country. And that's really something that's very, very important, is to understand that you really need to understand and really honor sort of the culture also that you're interacting with as well.
Right.
That's such a good point.
Yes.
And actually, while we're on this topic, we were chatting earlier about self-ID.
Yes.
And it was you, Malou,
Yes.
right, who said that you have it now in
We
every...
have it in the UK and in Australia,
Yep.
And you have...
as well as the US.
I have it all over.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
You have it in
pretty
every
much.
country.
We're actually starting in Saudi Arabia as well, but
Wow.
we've got it pretty much all
Wow.
over. Yeah.
That's great.
And how about Airbus?
So we're starting down that path. Our plan is to implement in 24. Of course, it's a data privacy topic that's taking up a lot of energy at the moment. And it's something, frankly, that we're having to really work through delicately with our European partners because, again, it's different.
Yeah.
So in the one way, the European partners help you. In another way, it becomes another challenge, right?
That's right.
So I'm here to say I'm going to help Jennifer go through her challenges to get to self-ID where you are. The thing
Yeah.
You know, the thing I like to say before we transition to the next slide is I just had a call just Monday, actually, on our self-ID steps for Saudi Arabia. And obviously, we were thinking the biggest piece we needed to work on was the disability piece first, because it's a piece we could do. We've got employees out there. We had our legal team, employee relations, everything there. But the thing we talked about that I thought was very encouraging is, are we prepared to support our colleagues when we go do this?
Right.
And the thing that we had to really land on, which sometimes your employees and colleagues who are really driving to help you to do this don't necessarily want to hear, because they really want to go because they're hearing their colleagues say this. But we had to land and say, let's get our house in order first, that we can support our colleagues from that perspective before we decide to put the data out there to understand how we exist.
Right.
And it's got to be important to be able to get your shop in place before you decide to go collect the data.
That is
Right.
such a good point. Yes. And
Right.
I think we're having some of those conversations as well. And I want to be on the call when you and Jennifer are getting together
All of
as
us
well.
are going to
sure.
get together.
Because we have it in the US,
Yes.
but Europe, it's challenging. And there are a lot of
Right.
privacy and legal concerns.
Yes.
And I have so much to share, but let me just say this. When we did it for the UK, and just so you understand the transition you make, when we did it for the UK, we wind up in the second round getting the right response rate that we then could increase our underrepresented communities in the UK. That's the goal you want to do.
Exactly.
Is there a community out there that you need to better understand how they exist? And so now our diversity dimensions have expanded in the UK.
Yes.
And so that's the goal where you want to get to. That's the success of your self-ID campaign.
Right. It's making this community visible and
Yes.
have a voice instead of, to quote the panel from yesterday, instead of serving in silence.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I need to get us to the next question before
Okay.
someone starts to say that, Kevin, you're holding us all up. And you know, this question, we talked about this. My company strives to foster inclusion in the workplace. And guess what the results are saying? What we thought we would see, but then we said to ourselves, we hope we see more negative because the community that's here is probably well supported, but how do they feel as a whole collectively in regards to what our organizations are doing? And so it's great to hear that there's a good amount of agreement. Obviously, we all feel like we still should be doing much more and doing the right things. But I'd like, maybe Milu, starting with you, why do you think most of our colleagues here agree? What is it that we're doing that's so different?
Well, and many of the people here are sort of in the know and in our ERG leadership, obviously, which is great. So thank you for all of that.
Yep.
But I do think it's important, and I'll restate what I said earlier, right? We can have differing experiences across our companies, our large companies, and we have to really acknowledge that. And, it's been eye-opening for me to go to some of the sessions here, including one that my colleagues from Northrop, the space sector, ran yesterday on reverse mentoring, because it reminded me that there are pockets of the company that need more intervention, need more hand-holding, more support, more education, right? And I think that is a key piece, and probably why some people also feel very positive is they know that we have leaders in place who are absolutely committed to doing that, right? And simply, the culture that I'm used to in the area that I'm based in Maryland, where we have 14,000 employees in a relatively liberal state, right? And a long, long history of being very open and supportive, can be very different if you're in a different state, like the state of Utah, for example, where we're really growing our workforce exponentially right now and hiring so many new people into the company and trying to integrate all those different views about what's appropriate, right, in the workplace and what's appropriate in personal life.
Yeah, yeah. Sarah?
I mean, it's so true what you said about you could be in different parts of the company, have totally different experience. I think about manufacturing, which is, 40% of Boeing's workforce is manufacturing. It is, we're a microcosm of the country, and we, every political view, social view that is out there, it's inside as well. And that population is harder to reach too, right? We can't send emails and expect them to be received, or videos, or even pull people off the floor to have inclusion sessions. So that's a really big challenge for us. And it's also an area where I know we have a number of our trans employees on the shop floor. So that is definitely a challenge in making sure we've got the right culture at every level, in every function, in every business unit, in every geography. We're not there yet. But thanks to all of the allies and the advocates that exist, we can start to create some of that awareness and address problems when we know of them. I think, to this question of how do we foster LGBTQIA inclusion in the workplace, I have to give a huge amount of credit to our BRGs. Our team is small. My team, we're 35 people.
That's big.
Okay.
That's, Sarah, that's huge.
We're 35 people for 150,000 to support, but our BRG membership is, of course, much
comparable
larger.
size. Okay, I got you. Okay.
Okay, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it would be great if we all had hundreds
Claudia,
of people.
she's not complaining. Okay.
The BRGs have thousands of members, right? And they are the boots on the ground. They are also innovators. So it was boots on the ground innovators that founded the Boeing trans employee BRG, that founded the family members of trans individuals who have come to knocking on the benefits door saying, hey, we need WIG coverage. We need this kind of coverage. We need to reinstate domestic partner benefits. This whole marriage equality thing is not working out like planned. We got to reinstate domestic partner benefits. Thank God for these people who are willing to speak up and innovate and help us make better decisions and be more inclusive as a company. Yeah. And I think, honestly, that's our greatest power, I would say at Boeing, is the focus we place on empowering the voice, listening to the voice, and then taking action because of it. Because the intelligence is out there. Yeah. We don't presume we have it ourselves, but we know it's out there and it can help us be better.
Jennifer, I want to come to you in a minute, but I want to link on something you were talking about, allyship. And we talked earlier about, think about the different communities just in the LGBTQIA community, right? You talk trans and all that. It's not equal, right? And so we have to think and take allyship to a whole nother level relative to the communities within that larger community. You talked about BRGs, and yesterday we heard a lot about BRGs, and I heard all these great things, but I'm here to tell you, keep your eyes open. We did something very monumental that I don't think we've ever done. I don't know if anyone has done it on the stage, but we actually asked an executive sponsor to step down.
Oh.
And it was an executive sponsor of our Be Proud BRG. And that executive sponsor was part of the community.
You have everyone's attention, Kevin.
Yeah.
And, Claudia sitting over there is the one who manages all this, but we collectively decided that our Be Proud BRG was not moving in the direction we needed it to. And we thought we needed a change, and that individual was not doing the part that they signed up for. And this person is an executive in the organization and did not necessarily like the approach we were taking in a replacement, but we did it. And we didn't wait for that individual to come back to approve where we were going. And so we picked someone who wasn't part of the community that since day -1 has already linked up in a way that other individual never showed up for 365 days.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And it's monumental. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. So Jennifer, I'll transition to you because I think it's significant. To be able to make those changes when you need to.
For sure, and what it tells me is leadership shows up in all kinds of different places. And at Airbus, there is no way we would have made the progress we've made in our journey without our ERGs. Our Pride at Airbus ERG is by far the ERG that leads the way. All the other ERGs look to our Pride ERG for guidance on how to form an ERG, how to really cultivate and bring that ERG to life. And it really helps define our employee engagement strategy at Airbus and what inclusion really looks like. So the folks that run our ERGs are our leaders. Doesn't matter what level they are in the organization, they are leading the way of our cultural journey, and we know that. And so one of the ways we have tried to support them is to create a development program, a talent program specifically for employee resource group members, not just the leaders of the employee resource groups, but the members of the employee resource groups who may need additional support with personal branding and leadership development and working on some of the personal things they want to work on to help get themselves ready for their next step in their own development journey. We just piloted that program this year. It was a huge success, and our CEO met with that group and became a believer very quickly that he was staring at the face of the future leadership of Airbus. So this program will continue to run in a regular cycle with our other talent programs. And I didn't create that program. The rest of HR didn't create the program. The content of the program was created by the people in our employee resource groups.
Yeah, something I'd like to add, I think, which we also acknowledge too, as we're growing, right, and hiring, and our workforces are becoming younger in many cases, it's causing this tidal wave of change, which I welcome, right? So we're on track at Northrop this year to hire over 16,000 new employees into the company. And a huge number of those are earlier career employees, and they're changing the face literally and the beliefs of our company. And that tidal wave of change is going to help carry us. Absolutely. And I fully agree with what Sarah said about inside our walls. Like, all kinds of things are happening outside our walls. Inside our walls, we're very clear about how we treat one another, regardless of our personal beliefs, and the respect that we have for one another. But this tidal wave of new thinking, this tidal wave of people, young people, who this is how they live. We are, right? The theme of this whole conference, we just are. And we're here, and you need to accept it. That is the future. And I'm excited about it because having that tidal wave will help a great deal.
Right.
And it matters to them.
Absolutely.
They will have their choice of employers, and they will choose the employer that they believe is walking its talk. Our school district put out a survey, maybe it was in June for Pride Month, but they put out a survey that in my children's school district, 30% of the students identify as not binary and or not heterosexual. And I actually think that is low. I think the 30% is low. But compare that to, are we all Gen Xers up here? I don't know.
I'm
Roughly.
borderline something,
yes.
but it's not Gen X. Yeah.
Some of us are way far from Gen X.
Well, anyway, in the eras that where we grew up, I mean, it was a very different time. So you're right. It's a tidal wave. It's an expectation, and we better be ready.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And to your point, Kevin, about the self-ID and being ready for, like, we better be ready to step in and support the new teammates and who they are every step of the way. And it's a really exciting time.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is. I think I'm supposed to bring us to the point that we now go back to looking at
All right.
how inclusive is the aerospace industry.
Okay, we're coming back to that original question. So after this 45-minute chat we've had up here, has anything changed in your perception of how inclusive the aerospace industry is? So let's put that question back up and see if there are any differences.
I think it's still a bell curve.
Still in
It's
that
still
middle.
Still a bell curve.
So that's the challenge. Actually, we are all challenged here because many of you are with us, right? So it's the challenge that we still have as we leave here is to how to even have the view in our own heads change, right? And that we're doing fine. Let's just say the middle is fine, but is it enough?
Yeah.
Is it enough? And what else can we do? Right? And I know that one of the things I value most as the executive sponsor for our Pride organization at the Enterprise is I love to have that challenge. I love to have people tell me, this is what's not enough, right? And this is what I need you to do as an executive sponsor. I think, Kevin, your points about executive sponsorship, it's just not a showy title that you just put on your bio, right? It needs to be a job that you're working hard.
Yeah.
Providing opportunity for those ERGs. So as ERG members here, be sure that you take advantage and of the exposure you have to senior leaders, but also demand what it is you need them to do.
Yeah. To help the business, right? At the end of the day, not only
Absolutely.
yourself, but also the position of the business, because as we continue to grow, we have to think about that employee base in our workforce, that we want to make sure that they feel in a way that they belong and they can be successful and thrive in the organization.
Creating the culture
Yes.
and
Right.
cultivating that culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we have time for questions and comments. And in addition to questions, I would also love to hear, what can we do to get out of number 3 and move into
the right.
number 4 and number
4 or
5?
5.
So do we have mic runners?
Yes.
And then for those watching online, throw your questions in the chat, and I'm monitoring.
Lauren, I think you need to speak up.
Oh, sorry. For those watching online, throw your questions in the Q&A chat, and I will call them out for you.
Got somebody back. Oh, a ton of people. The Boeing people are front. You all have to wait your turn. Sarah, we're going to be good friends.
Hi. One of the things I've been hearing a lot about in our company as well is the ERGs, BRGs are usually volunteer-based. At your companies, are you doing anything, monetary rewards or recognition for folks who's, doing this maybe outside of their day jobs, or do you have people who that is their full-time job?
I can take the first crack at it. We don't do anything formally in terms of any kind of monetary supplement for ERG leads, but we are starting to put some money where our mouth is from a development standpoint, and we try to make sure that we have a consistent approach of our ERG leaders having a certain percentage of their objectives tied to their ERG leadership, which impacts their bonus. Okay. And I think that's a really good first step. And our challenge is making sure that happens consistently throughout the business.
We last year started awarding RSUs to our enterprise officers. Is it 100 RSUs?
What's RSU?
Restricted stock units.
Oh, okay.
So when stock is close to $300 and you get 100 of them, it's not. It's something. And we hope to, like Jennifer, we hope to do more investment in leadership development.
You're going to have more people volunteering to be here.
Yeah.
The thing I just want, if I can just add something real quick, we don't have any formal compensation piece. There's a couple of things we're dealing with. One, the pushback from the organization to not allow employees to volunteer and do discretionary performance in the space. It's a pretty significant thing that comes about every now and then, so we want to drive that in a way. But we do things, we have global business meetings once every 2 years where we invite significant leaders, and I make sure that every chair of our BRG has an invite. And there's other recognition things that we're doing to kind of support. But we also ask the executive sponsors to send a specific note to the manager supervisor of each of the chairs and vice chairs. So when performance management time comes, there's that added incentive that's added there until we can get our performance management system to a point where we can have that piece in there. So
We don't have a compensation component. It is volunteer activity, and it can be hard to recruit new people because they do see the added burden of the work.
Yep.
We do increasingly have managers who reference and record it in the performance review as well and take it into account, although that's not uniform yet, I would have to say. So it's something we can work on. I got some good ideas here.
yeah,
Let's
good
take another
question.
question.
Very good question.
Okay.
So just thinking about the talent life cycle of a diverse employee, there's tons of different stakeholders. You have your talent acquisition, you have benefits, you have whoever's in charge of ESG, your BRGs. So I'm wondering from a governance perspective in your organization, who is owning the DEI agenda? Who's setting that strategy? And how, I guess, two other questions within that, how are you communicating and activating those different stakeholders effectively? And has that evolved over the last 3 years?
Yeah, I want to start. I
yeah,
can
go ahead.
start. So at Northrop, we do have a chief diversity officer. She's not here today. I'm here in her place. She's my peer, my colleague. She works very closely with the HR leadership team, of which I'm a part. She also works directly for our CEO. So she, big picture, drives that strategy. When it comes to this community, though, as an executive sponsor for our ERG organization, I'm very involved in those conversations as well because I want to make sure the voices of our 24 ERG chapters and over 3,000 employees who are very active in those chapters is heard. So it's a group effort. It's a team effort. There's not really a single player. And the HR team is very much involved, obviously, in the benefits and all those other pieces. So we have to have arms linked so that we are thoughtful and successful in executing a series of things that make sense.
Yeah, we're very similar. I didn't want to add to it, but very, very similar. I will just say this. When I stepped into the role 5 years ago, we had 2, maybe 3 BRGs in it. The maturity, the effectiveness, and where we were going was all over the place. And I said to the organization, let me take the BRG program to a different level. Let's bring that underneath me from a governance standpoint. I'm tied to our president COO, like your CEO, space. I'll directly link it to our D&I action plan and to our roadmaps. And then that way it's aligned and connected with what we're trying to drive from a DEI space. So that it really helped us to do that. Now, of course, there's other challenges and things we have to do, but that gave us a great governance to be able to drive it. So
I'm ditto what
Yeah,
Milu
yeah.
said.
DE&I at Airbus is embedded inside HR. It's not my preference. I think it should be standalone and report into the CEO. But the way we compensate for that is to have a business-led inclusion and diversity board of senior leaders. And those senior leaders listen to members of the community, mainly ERG leaders, who come and propose things that we need to consider for our D&I roadmap. So our strategy is built with that board, but driven completely out of the ERGs.
Yep.
Who's next?
Bring 'em
Jill
on.
Sobek, L3 Harris. How do you engage your hourly employees? We've been having a lot of difficulty with the lack of a charge code, as I'm sure everyone loves to experience, of getting those people in our events, in our leadership, et cetera, getting that perspective.
I can take that first. It's a big challenge. You've heard me talk about our Pride group being probably our largest, most mature, most active employee resource group. Getting people off the production floor, away from the aircraft or the helicopter to go to meetings, to go to events is challenging. But it starts with the leader of the site or the manufacturing unit or the business saying this is important. And then they create the space for the individuals to be able to participate. It's not, we're not where we want to be, but creating equal access to all of our ERGs for our production employees is one of our key strategies of enabling our own growth. Because if any of our ERGs are surviving off of management running them, then that's going to drive your culture in a certain direction, and it may not be reflective of really who you are as a company.
Yeah, we don't have the solution either. And if anyone has it, you will be a billionaire, because I think that we're all trying to figure that out. At Boeing, we've got, every single person who's on the flight line building the aircraft, they are serving a really critical purpose. And it's tough to pull, to have someone walk off the flight line to go to a BRG session or something like that. So we're trying to work through that, and we're working on getting a charge line that folks can use, to attend an hour event every month. We're working on things like that to build the infrastructure and systems, but we don't have it solved yet. It's a systemic challenge, I would say.
Yeah. Sarah, you actually you said something dynamic there. To the point of the question is, there's really no single way to solve that problem, right? We don't have hourly employees. We have what you call craft professionals. So we used to call it non-manual employees, people in the office, manual employees, and we said, let's be a little bit more inclusive. It's professionals or craft professionals. And just like I talked today with our organization about our We Are Bechtel campaign to drive our behavioral framework and our vision, value, commitments, we put a success plan together that talked about what you do over the 90 days. And we gave a plan for the organization to use this, and based on your scalability, based on your flexibility, how you sit, develop your plan within the parameters that we have here in our 90-day, and utilize the key components of that to do what you need to do. And don't think about it as something extra. If you already have certain efforts in place, integrate what you need to do to bring those groups and people together. And I think if we start thinking like that and drive scalability and flexibility in place, we can then start making a way and paving the way to bring those hourly employees, craft professionals into the mix and drive some level of engagement that they see like they're part of something.
Yeah, I just want to amplify something that Jen said. The local decision-making, local solutioning of this issue, in my experience, works much better than waiting for some corporate answer to come from on high with a single charge code.
Great
In our
point.
industry, charge codes are everything, right?
Yeah.
To charge your time. Local leaders and local support can find solutions to that problem.
Absolutely.
And so, it can be more difficult if you're at a massive site. I get it. but not all of our sites are so humongous that it's impossible. So that would be my initial thought there. And I think there are probably folks in the room who can give you some other ideas too if you want to network afterwards.
I am now on this side. Anybody on this side with a
and there-
You
question?
got some people up front.
Some people up front, Lauren.
Their hands are tired. I know they're tired. They've been doing this for a long time.
Hi. I'm a trans person. One of the most important thing for trans people is healthcare, and I was curious if you could elaborate on whether or not you all cover WPATH Standards of Care 8 for your employees.
Okay.
The WPATH, what was the rest of the
Standards
piece?
of Care
Yes for
Yes.
Boeing.
8.
Yeah. So our benefits are aligned with WPATH as well. And, I think I have a colleague here who really began within my tenure, right, our incredible support for people who are curious about transitioning, are planning to transition, and how we support those employees and particularly support the teams that they're on as well, because it's about care and support for the individual who's going through the process, but then it's also getting the entire team comfortable as well, which is no small feat. And Pan Roberts, who's here in the front row, has been really the person in our team who, I get emotional talking about it because when the employees who have benefited from the support that she has rallied, it's life-changing. And I'm sure there's much more we could do still, right? I'm not naive on that front, but what we do now is remarkable to me. And again, it's not anything I would ever have thought I would find in our industry. It just blows the preconceived notions out of the water.
Our Pam Roberts is Megan Wells, and she's right there. And the answer to your question is yes.
But those type of efforts that you talked about, Milo, is really driving this data.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's really making an impact.
And I
for
think this is, like we talked about at the beginning, having holistic benefits is one thing, particularly for people going through their transition. But it's the support system that
Yes.
we create in the organization, in the workplace, with the teams, educating managers, creating awareness, creating a safe space, and giving knowledge. I think one of the things at Airbus we've had to learn the hard way is we haven't marketed the great things we do
Yeah, right.
very well.
Yeah.
And this is what needs to change.
Yep.
That's what I was talking about. Get your house in order.
Yeah,
Get your house in
exactly.
order. Right?
Should we
Anyway.
speed round the last?
Go.
Let's get a
for
few
it.
more. There's some up front.
So my name's Taylor. I work at Northrop Grumman. As a trans employee that was reported, I know DE&I has my back, no matter what. It makes me feel safe no matter where I go in the company. I guess I wanted to say with the support for transition and the communication out to the employees of the good things that are happening, I think that's one of the leveraging things that we see in the metrics, that people feel like it's inclusive when they see the actions of the company on their behalf. And that's how they rank and measure when they get offers from other industries. Like I was scouted by another company. They were desperate. They loved me. They thought I was cis. And in my research on them, I found that they didn't talk about trans people at all, except maybe in an earnings letter at one point. And I had to say, look, I appreciate the offer, but I'm in a place where I'm supported and to a certain extent celebrated by my company, and I don't want to leave that happy place.
Awesome.
We rode on the bus together here. So, yeah.
So my question revolves around, I've heard the word safety used multiple times. I've had numerous conversations with my fellow employees. My name's Trinity Downing, by the way.
Nice to meet you, Trinity.
Nice to meet you as well. And I love the conversation that's going on, but I've heard the word safety thrown around a few times. Are you thinking about the safety of your trans employees, the family members, the employees of your trans family members, where they're at when they're not at work? inside of your four walls. Because this is the conversations that we're having here.
Right.
Because this is the conversation I am going back to my home building and I'm going to have. Sarah, you already know this. I've already forewarned you that I'm going to go back and have this conversation. You know that this is going to happen. So this isn't a surprise to you. So just so that you know, I'm not blindsiding you. But what is the other companies doing about this for your people?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Go ahead, Millie.
No,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I'll tell you, I've spent the first 10 years of my Airbus life in Mobile, Alabama. Not the most open place, okay? But it's where the majority of growth is happening for Airbus, okay? We're going to double in size, potentially get another product line there, potentially down the road. And it is a huge challenge for us to have to be able to recruit people to come to Alabama and say, this is a safe place, this is an inclusive place. We are taking every opportunity we have politically, as a private employer, investing billions in the state and in the city, where the city is very welcoming, frankly. I don't have a lot of concern about support the city gives us. It's the state that's the problem, because they're enacting all these hateful laws. And so what we're trying to do is to work within, we talked about this at an earlier session, to work within a frame that a corporate environment will allow in the government relations space and things like that, to have frank discussions with legislators, with governors, senators, etc., about how this is hurting our business. And when it hurts our business, and we can't grow and expand and pay more taxes, then they care.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the conversation that we are trying to have. And we'll have the same one in Texas, and we'll have the same one in Mississippi, and the story goes on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy conversation at all. But when I'm talking to prospective employees, I tell them, Airbus does care about you. They care about your family. They care about the community in which you live. That's why we want to try to change things even outside our four walls.
Yeah, and I think while our companies are working on that legislative front, right? Your question about security, though, you can get very pragmatic about it to say, like, what are the tips? Are there tips? Does a company even go into that space? And our first reaction would probably, no, that's your personal life. We can't give you tips on security in your personal life. But the reality is, when you think about our companies, we have very deeply knowledgeable security teams, hugely knowledgeable security teams.
Yes.
Many of us send employees to very difficult parts of the world.
Yes.
And we brief them on how to be safe, right? And so with our Pride organization, this issue of safety while on business travel came up this year. And lots of consternation. What could we do to do more? And I said, I don't know that we have to do more. We have to leverage what we have. We have intense expertise. And how can we apply that same expertise to any type of employee traveling in any place that is of danger to them? We have traditionally thought of that as outside the U.S. boundaries, but perhaps it's not.
Right.
Right? And so I think it might be something worth exploring. Again, there's a reality that a company can't protect you in your home. But there's information that can be shared with any employee about how to be savvy, right? As you move through the world with your security clearances, with the knowledge that you have, with the corporate information that you have, right? So again, I'm very pragmatically focused on just leveraging resources that we have. And so we've done that at Northrop, just begun to do that, quite honestly, at the instigation of the PRIDA team to engage the security team to use their resources just to help us be informed. And I hadn't thought about it from the perspective you have, but that's the thing I'll take back. To say, let's expand it that way, because we do that when we send people overseas to support bases and things like that in difficult areas of the world. How to just be aware of their personal surroundings and how to comport themselves in a way that they minimize risk. So great question.
I think we're over time.
Okay, I think we're over time.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you all. We're over.
Was that our grace period?
Yeah.
That's no,
The
that's,
red blinking.
that's in the negatives. That's,
Oh,
We're
you spent
over by
5 minutes more.
5 minutes.
Okay.
We'll stay here
Can I
longer if
just
you
say
want.
something in closing, which is that yesterday in the Serving in Silence panel, there was a senior ranking military official in the audience who said at the close of it, this community, what many of you have gone through, has created so much fortitude, so much courage, so much determination. It is a superpower. And yes, it's a burden, but it's a superpower. And I was really surprised and heartened to read recently that with all of the negative legislation that has been proposed in the past year, 91% have been defeated by pro-equality efforts. And you can bet that those pro-equality efforts are in large part fueled by this kind of fortitude and courage and determination. So I hope that leaves all of you with some hope. There is more good than there is evil out there, I still believe, and there's a superpower within every single person in this room. So let's go use it for good.